It has been over a decade since we took a look at Cave's Akai Katana on the Xbox 360, and while copies could be had for pocket change not too long ago, if you knew where to look, it sure would have been nice to play it in a more modern setting, like on Steam or PlayStation 4. But not so much the Switch though, because look, the Switch is way too inconsistent when it comes to clarity and responsiveness. It's nothing personal, it's just facts. But hey, wouldn't you know it, here it is on PlayStation 4, Steam, and yeah, never mind that. Leading up to its release, I've been playing Akai Katana on the Xbox 360 for a minute, and not only have things started to click in all three of its modes, I've also come to an interesting conclusion. Akai Katana might just be Cave's best all-around shooter. So in this episode of Caually Hard-Core, we're revisiting Cave's Akai Katana for Steam, PlayStation 4, and by proxy, I guess, the Switch, but mostly the other two. And here it is, the middle tier special edition from Amazon Japan, which came with some neat goodies housed in its stylish collector's box for around $50. Wrapped in a resealable poly bag, the box itself is devoid of game and system information, as the same one is used for both the PlayStation 4 and Switch versions of the game. Instead, a thin wraparound band features the PlayStation 4 branding, player information, and hard disk requirements. So let's take a look inside. With the front panel opening from the bottom flap, first and foremost we find an acrylic standee of the arcade instruction panels, which honestly I think is a better choice than, say, just a flat image of one of the planes. I do still want an actual 3D model or figurine of the Orchid or Sakura though, those would be choice. The game disc itself isn't far behind, with a typical PS4 case and the expected Akai Katana key art on the front, and various bits of information on the back of the case. The cardboard insert that holds these items folds out, revealing the final part of the package, the Akai Katana Matsumoto Heavy Metal Arrangement CD, containing the all-new arrangement featured in this release. As an Amazon exclusive, I also got this great Akai Katana clear file, perfect for a few flyers that I've got kicking around. All in all, it's a pretty good package for being as relatively inexpensive as it is. But what about the game? Well, like I said before, Akai Katana is pretty good as far as Cave games go. Really pretty good, so I was pretty stoked to get to play it again. Cave's Akai Katana was originally released in arcades on August 20th, 2010 as one of Cave's few horizontal shooters. In fact, as of this video, it's the last one they ever made. It was subsequently ported to the Xbox 360 with a Cave-published release in Japan on May 26, 2011, and a year later in the West by Rising Star Games on May 15, 2012. It sports two extra modes, Climax, which rebalances the difficulty scoring and adds an extra stage, and Slash, which remixes the entire game with an even bigger emphasis on ridiculous damage and huge scores. More recently, an enhanced version with an exclusive mode known as Crimson Katana's EXA label was made for EXA Arcadia, but don't expect a home conversion of that. EXA is notoriously stingy about its exclusivity. Oh, and it's over $2,000 US. For the rest of us, Akai Katana makes its return to modern platforms once again as the only slightly enhanced Akai Katana Shin, this time ported and published by Zero Div and City Connection. As a conversion of the Xbox 360 version, it was released worldwide via Steam on December 15, 2022, and both digitally and physically in Japan the same day. As of this video, a Western release has not been announced, but I would be shocked, I say, if Strictly Limited didn't pick this up like they did other City Connection shooters like Death Smiles or the Cotton Saturn Tribute. As the final of 4 side-scrollers by Cave, Akai Katana is unsurprisingly very refined. Having dug into the Xbox 360 version in preparation for this new release, its mechanics seem to have suddenly clicked with me far better now than when I took a look at it a decade ago. This uncovered opportunities for huge score gains, defensive strats, and early extends that I just wasn't efficiently hitting during my review. Like the Xbox 360 version, Modern Akai Katana Shin has 3 different modes. The first is regular old vanilla Akai Katana, complete with a 4:3 aspect ratio and arcade soundtrack. It's the most difficult mode thanks to the speed of enemy bullets and scarcity of energy used to power up the Phantom mode of your chosen spirit guide. It's also the only one that features co-op play, which can lead to some great invincibility strats, but again is sometimes hindered by a lack of energy. Outside of the rare co-op sesh though, I don't play classic Akai Katana much, because its arranged modes are arguably more fun. That's where the rebalanced 16:9 Zetsu Akai Katana comes in, also known in the West as Climax. It behaves like vanilla, but offers way more opportunities for high scoring, big energy gains, and early extends while rebalancing bullet speed. Because of these tweaks, unlike vanilla, it doesn't feature a novice mode. 3 sets of characters tied to different planes are selectable, their unique fire and movement patterns allowing for several different approaches and strategies when taking on the game's 6 to 7 stages. For me, I prefer using the Marigold, which is heavily inspired off the Shinden, though the Sakura Lightning alike is also very good. The Suisen 2 style Orchid though, while my favorite from a design standpoint, does not have the same flexibility, so I hardly ever use it. Akai Katana's core gameplay mechanics revolve around 2 separate but equally important forms, Fighter and Phantom. While playing for survival is one way of going about things, what hooked me personally into Akai Katana in general is discovering how to maximize the energy needed to get into Phantom mode as many times as possible in any given stage, and then taking it to as extreme a point as I could. By default, your aircraft will draw energy from enemies if they're defeated closer to the plane itself with rapid or defense mode fire. In attack mode, which slows movement and intensifies your fire as with any other cave game, energy is drawn closer to the metagamma representing your pilot's spirit companion. Additionally, it can be collected and held around the metagamma before being drawn into your aircraft when fire is released. To assist with this, the Marigold and Sakura will lock the position of this metagamma in attack mode, however, the Orchid will not. Simple enough, but collecting energy to fill the green gauge in the top corner of the screen isn't quite enough on its own. With energy being held in place around the metagamma in attack mode, you can grow them by passing them through enemy bullets, pumping them up, and making them visibly larger. This should be done quickly though, as they'll disappear over time. Another really effective way to get energy, with Zetsu in specific, is defeating an enemy, mid-boss, or stage boss that has fired a laser beam. When destroyed, each beam fired will drop a ton of energy, which can be useful in continuing the stage with more phantom energy for more score, or to start the next stage with a full gauge. As a side note, lasers are handled a little differently in Akai Katana, as they aren't a one-hit kill. Rather, they'll wear down one of your lives, steadily changing the segment in question from yellow to red until it finally results in a kill. This is a merciful feature given some of the bosses you'll later encounter. Anyway, back on track. With energy in the Phantom gauge, you can then switch into Phantom mode to really take care of business. The Phantom mode allows for high attack power in attack mode and perfect defense when defense mode is active. A literal shield will appear, which will bounce any enemy attack off of it, lasers included, resulting in these shots circling around and homing in on you. Additionally, any close proximity enemies defeated in defense mode will launch suicide bullets, creating even more shots to deal with. With a little skill, corralling a whole whack of these shots, then switching to attack mode will allow for these bullets to be cancelled by an area of effect triggered by defeating any enemy in the bullet's proximity. These cancelled bullets will also trigger the same area of effect, leading to a cascading bullet clearing effect. These cleared shots are then changed to bonuses which orbit the Phantom form until it ends or is cancelled by the player, at which time they're drawn into your plane. However, wait too long and they'll turn red before vanishing, with no bonus collected. Knowing where to get the biggest medal counts, and more importantly, knowing when to voluntarily disengage Phantom mode is key to getting huge scores and faster extends. The gauge tied to Phantom mode starts out small, but will grow if lives are lost. An enterprising player could theoretically die a couple of times straight away for an extra large gauge, only to reclaim both lives through extends by the end of Stage 2. With extends happening at 20 million and 50 million respectively, these numbers can be hit rather easily once the mechanics click. Heck, 10 million is doable before the first boss on a good run. Another feature that Zetsu has over the original Akai Katana is its extra stage. Between Stage 4 and what would normally be Stage 5, players are challenged with a densely populated mounted pass, with giant guns, huge bullets, and an extra boss with some mean attack patterns. Stage 5 Kai, I guess? We'll go with that. Stage 5 Kai is one of the best stages in the game to really squeeze some high scores out of the run, even if the last extends that you might have gotten were as far back as 3 stages ago. Speaking of lives though, I came across a couple of quirks. Tweaking the game to allow for more lives on the outset actually shrinks the player's available Phantom power, balancing it due to the extra life the player now has in their stock. So, there won't be any extra meaningful Phantom power if you die. Also, changing extends to happen every 30 million points resulted in just 2 extends as normal, even though the extend sound triggered every time I hit another 30 mil. Oh well. Of course, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm any sort of an expert at this game. I mean, I still haven't even gotten to 1cc, but Zetsu Akai Katana feels so manageable that I could absolutely see it happening with a little more time, even for players of even lesser skill than I. But that's not all. There's also the titular Akai Katana Shin, which was known as Slash Mode in the Western release. I really liked Slash Mode, so Shin is a welcome arrangement in this package once again. This is a mode that's geared towards dealing absurd damage and taking advantage of large swaths of enemies for gigantic point payouts. The key to doing this is quite a bit different than vanilla and Zetsu, though careful use of both attack and defense mode are still required. With a bit of readjustment from vanilla and Zetsu, you can get there in no time. Basically, while in fighter mode, players can draw energy from enemies in attack mode and steal orbs in defense. These orbs will light up kanji around the player's aircraft until the maximum orb power is reached, at which point they'll start to rotate around your plane. When maximum phantom energy is reached, you'll also get a visual cue. Here's where the fun really begins though. When phantom form is engaged, the orbs collected will manifest and can be launched to not only damage and destroy enemies, but also clear out bullets in their paths. They can also be launched a little at a time rather than all at once if attack mode fire is sparingly used. However, these orbs and attack mode fire will also build up literal katanas, which have varying attack patterns and angles depending on the plane in use. These will be launched when you disengage phantom mode, at which point they'll just rip through everything they touch, slowing down in larger and more powerful enemies, and bosses, as they do so. All the while, gigantic point bonuses will flood the screen as they're drawn into your craft. If a boss is defeated with these blood katanas, they too will explode into high-value medals. Like Zetsu before it, Shin also features an extra stage to slice and dice your way through, and although it can be a tad on the easy side by comparison to other cave titles, it's still more than challenging enough post-stage 4 for even intermediate players. The short of the long of it is, Shin is one of the more satisfying cave arrangements that I've played. All the while, Akai Katana has the kind of presentation I can really dig in a shooter. The same angled down perspective that started with the Neo Geo CD's Ironclad and Cave's previous Pro Gear no Arashi, Akai Katana's viewpoint allows for ground-based enemies to approach from the top of the screen as well. Not really horizontal, but also not truly vertical. A misnomer, by the way, typically and erroneously used for Yoko-oriented vertical shooters like Gigawing. Comparatively few games in general use this kind of perspective, though notable doujins such as Battle Traverse and Rolling Gunner have to great effect. Akai Katana's soundtrack is also just excellent, especially Stage 3's incredible theme. The 2012 arranged version of Stage 3 is still one of my all-time favorites. And the enemy design, there are so many cool planes and ships and machines and set pieces. There's so much personality in them all, not to mention great little touches like huge planes that are also obviously seaworthy vessels, complete with marine propellers. The huge lavishly animated and detailed mid-bosses are just amazing. Each stage end boss is a visual experience in and of itself. And also of note, I particularly love the cruciform shine just before the boss kills. It's the perfect lead in to their final explosive destruction. So, what new features await in the new version? Well, since Exolabel is keeping the most significant developments Akai Katana has seen in the last decade all to itself, the biggest thing differentiating the new version to the Xbox 360 version is an extra soundtrack. To be honest, I still prefer the arranged tracks found even in the Xbox 360 version, but the Arranged 22 version definitely has its fans. And while this isn't meant to be a review at all, we've already had many people ask how it performs with regards to input delay and arcade faithfulness. Under the hood, I just can't tell you about any of that. I'm not so picky that I need tools to measure every individual frame that you're losing in latency. But at least on Steam and PlayStation 4, Akai Katana is solid. It's responsive in ways that dying can't be blamed on input delay. At the very least, it feels more or less identical to the 360 version, which is fine by me. Another question asked is, if you have the 360 version already, is this version worth it? Well, I mean, I bought it 9 times in total so far, so I'd say so. But in specific, the Collector's Edition's Arranged Matsumoto Heavy Metal Soundtrack CD and Amazon-exclusive clear file really made it a no-brainer to me. But being available more widely on systems that aren't an Xbox of some kind has led to viewers saying that they're excited to finally get to play it. For me, having it available on Steam alone makes it way more convenient to play. To bring it all home, all of this is to say that while not my personal favorite cave shooter, that's still EspGaluda II. Akai Katana has the kind of gameplay, approachability, and presentation that, in my opinion, makes it low-key Cave's best. Sure, there are more technical games like Dodanpachi that a wide swath of bullet hell aficionados default to when describing Cave's best titles, but while it does indeed have merits, it's not necessarily especially fun for more casual players that like a little more out of their shooter than squeezing through a pixel-wide zone of safety. For me, Akai Katana shows that huge numbers of bullets don't have to be a daunting, impenetrable wall of difficulty, and while it's still geared more towards an intermediate player, it's still the most fun you'll have with a horizontal cave shooter without equal. Speaking of Dodanpachi M2's new port, like Ketsui before it, is set to have all kinds of modes that more casual players are sure to dig. It'll be neat to dig into it whenever it releases. Until then though, while I have more neat shooting game content on the way, I also got my hands on the all-new portable monitor IPS LCD from Columbus Circle, and yet another PC Engine, this time with a box. We'll see you all in the next one.